Thank you for stopping by. My name is Irfan. I'm a maker. This is video number 4 in a multi-series where I capture my journey designing and making an oud instrument. If you have not viewed my earlier videos, they may be helpful for context. In videos number 2 and 3 respectively, I review the anatomy of the oud instrument and also how the oud instrument produces sound. In this video, I'm going to dive deeper into the bowl of the oud instrument. I'm going to review the entire process step by step, so you get an idea of what is involved in designing and constructing the bowl. Now, this process, the methods and the techniques that I'm going to share and what I'm following, there may be different options available. This is my first build, and there may be better techniques out there. And as I learn more and come across any improvements, I'm going to incorporate those into my process as and where they make sense. Now, there are several steps involved, and the process is fairly involved. So let's get started. If you have viewed my earlier videos, the anatomy of the oud instrument and how the oud instrument produces sound, this may look familiar. In this video, we're going to focus on the bowl of the oud, which is a resonant chamber and also a core structural component for the instrument. So let's go ahead and open up this bowl and let's take a look at what's inside, okay? The bowl of the oud has three basic parts, okay? So the neck block, the tail block, and the ribs, okay? Now this image, the center of the page shows that inverted bowl, right? And from my earlier video, I'd mentioned that the pear shape of the bowl is not by accident, okay? So the primary function of the bowl is that it serves as a resonating chamber. It amplifies the sound and shapes the sound, okay? And then the secondary function of the bowl design is that it serves as the main body of the instrument, okay? And provides the necessary structure to anchor the strings, bridge, and neck. And we're going to look at all of that in subsequent videos, okay? Now, if you look at the center of that image, I show the inverted bowl. The left-hand picture shows how the ribs, they glue to the neck block. And the right-hand picture shows how the ribs glue to the tail block. The top of the image, I show the tail block on the left hand and the neck block on the right hand, okay? And the bottom left image shows the profile view of the same, the neck and the tail block, and the bottom right shows the rib. It's pretty much cut and ready to install, okay? So again, we're going to go into each one of these in a lot of detail as we proceed with the series, okay? But this is just to give a high level kind of view on how the oud bowl looks, how that hollow chamber, the oud bowl, looks from the inside, and what are the different parts that make up the oud bowl. Now, one thing I don't show in this image is that typically on the inside of those ribs, so the ribs are glued together, right, to each other as well as to the neck and the tail block. But one thing I don't show on this image is that there is either a cloth or heavy crafting type paper that is used to seal the joints. So where each one of these rib pairs come together right on that joint on the inside, there's a crafting paper or a piece of cloth that would be glued on, and that serves to provide, A, it closes any gaps, B, it serves to provide additional rigidity and strength to the structure. Okay? Okay, so where do we start? All right, we just reviewed that the bowl is basically made up of 3 parts. All right, but the process and the tools and jigs that are needed to complete the bowl, that's a long list. On this page, I've divided it into 2 sections. On the left, I document the process steps and identify the end deliverables. And there's a dependency between these deliverables. Keep that in mind. Okay. On the right hand, I document the tools and jigs and the support elements that would be needed to facilitate the process that I define on the left. Okay. And I will dive deeper on this list in the next set of slides. All right. So this is a high-level summary, if you may. Okay. So looking at the list on the left, right, we got to start with a design of the bowl, and that is the starting point. Okay. From that design, we then derive the outer bowl profile template. Okay. Now this outer bowl profile includes the thickness of the ribs. Okay. Then from this outer bowl profile, we offset by the rib thickness to derive the inner bowl profile template. Okay. Then using that inner bowl profile template, we design and derive the neck and the tail blocks. Okay. Finally, we design and derive the rib template and the ribs. The rib shape follows the inner bowl profile template. Okay. So that completes the list on the left. Okay, so now let's review the tools and the jigs and the support. So this is the list on the right hand side. So starting with tools and workspace. Okay, this is a personal choice. There's no right or wrong here. Okay. In this particular series, I can talk about what I chose and my workflow and how I work. Example, I do not use or rely on too many power tools. Again, that's a personal preference. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. If you do, then your workspace choice must accommodate that preference. Okay, it could be a floor or a kitchen table. That works just fine as well. Okay. The next item on the list from a design perspective, I will talk more on preferences of using software such as Fusion 360, for example, or to take a traditional approach. And again, there's no right or wrong. Both are okay for designing the bowl, the profiles, and the neck and the tail blocks. I use the traditional approach. So in this series, I will talk about the traditional approach that I've used to design the bowl and the profiles. Okay. Next on the list, you will need a method, some mechanism to create these templates that I talk about. Right. So your the outer bowl profile template, the inner bowl, and so on and so forth. So there's different ways of doing it. I'll show you the way I do it. Okay. Now, in addition, you will need or may not need jigs for shaping the neck and the tail block. I tried just freeform shaping the neck and the tail block, and I found it hard. And I simplified that process by designing and coming up with these simple jigs. Okay, and I will show that, and I'll talk about that more. Okay. The next one is the bowl assembly jig. Again, there's a decision here whether you use open form or a mold, and even in a mold, there's 2 schools of thought. There's a rigid mold similar to what the lute makers use, there is somewhat of an still rigid but somewhat of an open space mold, and then there's a completely open form, assembling the bowl in air, kind of, right? So we look at those details. Then the next item on the list that you will need is a rib bending form and method to apply heat. Okay. Here you got to understand, why the wood bends using heat and moisture. You got to understand the lignin and what role that plays, and more importantly, how the bent wood or the bent rib retains its shape. So you need a form where you can clamp the bent rib, allowing it to cool down on that form, okay? And plus to lose moisture so that it then retains that shape of the rib profile, okay, aka the bowl profile. Then in addition, you will need a bending iron for finalization of the shape, because when you take this rib off the bending form and you start actually assembling it on the assembly platform, whatever you opt, either free form or a mold, you will have to tweak that rib so that it fits fairly accurately on the neck and the tail block and the adjoining ribs. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is on the next slide, I'm going to dive deeper into each one of these deliverables and steps and explain them in a little more depth. Okay. So let's look at step 1 in the process. Okay, the bowl design. Before you do anything else, you need to design the bowl. Okay, very simply put, we need to capture the shape of the bowl on paper. Okay, everything downstream depends on this and is derived from this. Okay, so there are different approaches. I'm familiar with 3, and there may be more. Approach 1, you have an existing oud. Right, so if you're fortunate enough to reside in an area where you have access to ouds and you have friends, you take a look around. You may own it. You may own an oud that you like. Take a look around, see what shapes you like, and you can use that to copy the profile. Okay, and I'm gonna touch on that on the next slides. Okay, so that's approach 1. Okay, approach 2 is that if you have the dimensions of an existing oud available to you. Okay, so what that means is that starting from the neck for each station, if you have the depth of the oud bowl, you can use those dimensions, and that would give you a good starting reference point for your bowl design. Okay, and approach 3 is you start from the basics. So you design using mathematics and geometric principles. You have a defined set of parameters as input, and based on your requirements, you come up with a design. And I'm going to touch on each one of these in the following slides. Okay. So let's take a look at approach 1. Okay, so you have an existing oud, and you're going to copy the profile. Okay. So the picture on the left, so similar to that, right? You laid the oud flat on a large enough piece of paper. So the soundboard is on the paper, and the bowl is top side. Okay. Now referencing back to my video number 2, anatomy of the oud, go watch that if you haven't. In that video, I talk about symmetrical and non-symmetrical oud bowls. Here for this approach, I'm making an underlying assumption that what you are designing is symmetrical. So the width of the bowl is equal to twice the depth of the bowl. Okay? So you lay the bowl flat, right? Large enough piece of paper. Make sure the oud is stable and does not move. Okay? You take a pencil and draw that bowl shape out on that paper. Okay, be a little conscious of your pencil riding evenly and consistently close to the rim of the bowl. The pencil curve, it don't matter, right? We are not designing a precisely, machined rocket ship. Okay, so there's some leeway in terms of how precise you sketch that shape. Okay, what is important though is that the curve you get is smooth and balanced. But yeah, do try your best to capture that shape as close to the rim as you possibly can. Okay, the pictures on the right is what I've sketched using my oud, which you see in the picture on the left. So those two right pictures is, what I did, what I sketched out. Okay, and I believe I do have a couple of videos from earlier where I kind of at a high level demonstrate, what I'm doing in this design process. Okay. So approach number 2, you use the dimensions of an existing oud bowl, okay, from somebody or someplace. Okay, if you have a luthier friend, ask them, you like a oud, and they may be kind enough, you like the shape, and they may be kind enough to, share the dimensions with you. So again, for each station, so that horizontal line, referencing from the neck, which is on the left hand of this drawing, which is station 0, you have depth points, a finite number of stations and a finite number of depth points. So the depth points are the vertical lines. So from station 0 on the neck to station N on the tail, you have those finite points and you lay it on paper, okay? And then you join those finite points in a continuous arc. You make sure that the arc is smooth and it is balanced. Okay, that is the important criteria here. Okay, and that will give you your design. Okay, at some point, I may decide to publish the dimensions I have, but irrespective, that is the concept behind approach number 2. Okay, so this is approach number 3. Okay, so if you truly want excitement and a rush factor, this is the approach for you. Okay, so this is starting from the basics, right? So mathematics and geometric principles, your input parameters and your requirements, and you come up with this design. Okay, so it's a think about it as a craftsman engineer mindset. So this is my humble attempt to design the bowl, and I have a video that I will publish at some point in the future. But this is the third approach where you design the bowl starting from the basics. Okay. So I think this is a good point to ramp off video number 4. We've barely touched the surface. So we looked at the bowl design and just the approaches. There's a lot of detail and a lot of information here. In my subsequent videos, I will continue going into details on each one of these items on the list, and also kind of showcase some of the methods and techniques that I use as I continue with the design and the build process. Okay. So I hope you will follow along my journey with me, and I hope to see you in my next video.